Today was Zion Adar Aleph. There's always a difference of opinion when there are two Adars, whether we celebrate, commemorate the Yortzeit of somebody who died in Adar, or whether he died in Adar Aleph or Adar Bet. But this week is also the Parsha of Tetzaveh. And the Parsha of Tetzaveh is one of the few Parshas in the Torah where Moshe Rabanu's name is not mentioned. In fact, from Chumash Shmos till almost the end, to the Chumash Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu is mentioned in every Parsha. But the Parsha he is not mentioned. So there's a famous piece from the Chassam Sofer here that he mentions that Moshe Rabbeinu said in next week's Parsha, in Kitisa. So he said to the Rabban Shalom V'mayin, if you don't listen to me, if you don't do what I say, erase me from the book that you have written. So even though the Ribono Shel Olam forgave the Jewish people and he did not destroy them at the Egel, so the condition, the Tanai, was never fulfilled. Nevertheless, the Gemara says that when a tzaddik says something, even if he says it conditionally, even if he says it al tanai, it leaves a roshem, it leaves a mark. So therefore the Chassam Sofer says, when he said, Mecheni no misifrecha, so they would erase him from one of the parshas. The only thing is, they waited a whole year. From Kitisa to Tetzaveh, which is a whole year of the parshas, but at the end they erased him from the parsha. The Moshe is not here. So what's the idea that Moshe is not here? That without, there's always a, we'll see later that the Jewish people were very dependent on Moshe. And they identified, in fact, Moshe with everything, with God, with whatever their whole experience. And we can well understand it because Moshe is such a domineering personality in history. And Moshe is so holy, he has to wear a mask. And Moshe goes up on Sinai for 40 days, 3 times. So we can understand that they're in awe of Moshe. Now, it will depend on what I discussed with you last week, whether these parshas of the Mishkan, Truma, Tetzaveh, etc., are before the Ma'aseh Egel or after the Ma'aseh Egel. In other words, whether we say like Rashi, Ein Mugdam U'Muchar B'Torah, so that the Ma'aseh Egel happened first, and the Mishkan was only, like Rashi says, was a kapora. The rabanu Shalom gave them an opportunity to redeem themselves with the Ma'aseh Mishkan. But that the Egel occurred first. The Ramban has a shita throughout Chumash that everything that is written happened first. In other words, that the Chumash is in perfect chronological order. And therefore, according to Ramban, the Ma'aseh Mishkan was before the Ma'aseh Egel, and therefore, according to the Ramban, it could not be a kapora because nothing happened yet. So therefore, he has a different opinion as to the mitzvah of the Ma'aseh Mishkan. We discussed it last week, that it should bring us back to the level of the Ovos, etc., the different Perushim. But anyway, if we say according to Rashi, that ain't mukdam u'muchar b'Torah, and therefore the Ma'aser Hegel preceded the issue of the parsha of Tetzaveh. In other words, in time, Kisisa happened before Tetzaveh. The way the Torah is written, Tetzaveh is before Kisisa. So we'll see that next week's parsha, which Rashi says happened before, we see the danger of, because the Jewish people said, K'ish Moshe, Asher Hotzionu Mimitzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu, who took us out from Egypt, and he split the sea, and he did all of this, and he brought down the luchos. Lo yadanu mehoyolo. Where is he? Moshe went up on Har Sinai, and he's gone. And therefore, because they were so reliant on Moshe, and because they identified Moshe with everything that was spiritual, in other words, so they didn't have I don't know how to put it, they didn't have a sophisticated way of dealing kaviyochel with the rabanu shalom. That's why they made an ego. Because you have to be able to see God. You have to be able, it has to be tangible. You have an invisible God. And after hundreds of years in Egyptian society, which was naturally pagan, and the Egyptians had many gods, and even when they had pharaohs that had only one god, but the god was always represented, so they worshipped the crocodile, they worshipped other things. So the Jews had, so we had a god Moshe, right? And he's not here, so now we're going to have another god. We're going to have the eagle. So the identification of Moshe with everything spiritual in their life indirectly leads to this kind of avodah zarah. Because avodah zarah is a person also. In the ancient world, all of the great leaders and the tyrants, they were worshipped as gods, right? So that's a tremendous danger. So because of that, the Torah took a whole parsha here, which again, since it's a mukdam u'muchar b'Torah, happens after the Ma'aser Hegel, and shows us that, that the Torah exists without Moshe. Moshe's name's not here. It's not Moshe. Later on in Tanakh, in the Novi Malachi, it's in the Haftorah that we read on Shabbat HaGadol according to our custom. The Novi says, Zichru Toras Moshe Avdi, Asher Tzivisi Oso Bechorev Al Kol Yisrael. So there he says Toras Moshe. Again, he puts Moshe back in the picture. You remember the Torah of Moshe that I gave to Moshe al Har Sinai. So the Meforshim all say that's why he said Asher Tzivisi Kol Yisrael, that the Novi qualified it. The Torah that I gave to Moshe, I gave to the Jewish people. It's obligatory on the Jewish people with Moshe or without Moshe. The only thing is that we have to remember, we remember people. It's hard for us to remember ideas. It's hard for us to remember sophisticated thoughts that we cannot translate into life experiences. So therefore, Zichru Toras Moshe Avdi is almost a necessity, that we remember Moshe. Even though Moshe, the Torah is even without Moshe. And that's why Chazal say that the Torah was before the creation of the world. The Torah is always there. The Torah is eternal. But we're dealing with human beings. So when we deal with human beings, Zichru Toras Moshe Avdi. However, the Navi puts in the caveat, Asher Tzivisi, I'll call Yisrael. The Torah is for all the Jewish people. It's not Moshe's. It doesn't belong to him. And that idea we find reinforced throughout the Talmud and all the Chachmei Adoros that Klal Yisrael has had. That the Torah belongs to everybody. And that's what we say in davening, V'sein chelkeinu b'sorasecha. I have a chelik. I saw that, company had 50 or 100 million shares out, owned by different people. And when there's a group of people that always buy one share in every company. And they make tzoros because they have one share, so they can call the stockholders meeting, and they want to say what the agenda should be. So here you have the owner of the company that's, let's say, he owns 51%, and the guy owns one share, so he makes them crazy. But that's how the Torah is too, saying Chalkeinu b'sorasecha, right? So the Vilna Gaon had more shares than I have. But I also have shares. I also am entitled to the annual report. I'm also entitled to call the meeting. So if a Jew feels like that, so then he has an attachment to Torah. Then it's my Torah. So even though it's Moshe's Torah, but it's my Torah. And that was emphasized throughout the Jewish world. And that was one of the things that should be emphasized over and over again, that Torah is not personal to any one person, no matter how great the person is. So therefore, that's one of the lessons that we can learn from the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is omitted in this parsha, because it's a way that Moshe teaches us a great lesson that will apply for all time and not just for his generation. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashi Omer Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zachos Es Yisrael L'fichach Hirba Lahem Torah Mitzvos Shenemar Adonai Chavetz L'man Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir. Amen.